Welcome to another episode of the Advice First podcast. This is your host, Robert Clark. I have a couple fine guests sitting in front of me, one of which may just be a co-host at this point. You've been on so many episodes, which I could not be more excited about. We have Mr. Fred Watchel, as I just found out is pronounced Watchel, but we won't get into that.
Yeah, it's always great to be here. And, Robert, wife and daughter are big fans of the show also. So
I'd love to hear that. Well, you're invited back again then, whenever you'd like. And of course, our main focus for today, I'm very excited to dive into this topic. We have Dr. Roché Vermaak in front of us.
That's it in Afrikaans, and in English it's Vermaak.
Vermaak. Welcome to the Advice First podcast. Dr. Roché is with Family Promise out of Santa Clarita, California. And I am very excited to dive into this topic because it is such a pressing conversation in our current world, coming through COVID and a pandemic and all of these things. Dr. Roché, I'm sure you've been extremely busy. Have you not?
Well, what we do is we provide services to homeless families. And the reason I'm here is Fred joined our board last year in the middle of the pandemic. This is the first time we've met because we've been virtual meeting. So Family Promise, we're not an island on our own. We have a big story. We're part of a national organization that started in 1986 in New Jersey. And it starts with a story of a sandwich. Our founder, Karen Olson, was driving down. She saw somebody at a bus stop that was looked homeless. She went and she bought her a sandwich. She gave her the sandwich, got to know her, and the woman's question is the one that haunted her when she said, "Thank you for the sandwich, but I'm still homeless. Where am I going to sleep tonight?" And what Karen did is with her two sons, they were part of a feeding program, helping out homeless people with a meal, etc. But it haunted her. How can we get beyond just a band-aid of giving a meal? Where do homeless people sleep, especially families? And so it's the beginning of a joke. A priest, a rabbi, and an imam got together. And she literally got the faith community involved across the faith boundaries and said homelessness doesn't know skin color, it doesn't know ethnicity, it doesn't know gender, and it doesn't know religion. Everybody struggles with homeless. And the reality that came from that meeting was there is a space that for the most of the week is not utilized outside of 1 hour for Sunday school. And that's a Sunday school classroom. Mm-hmm. And so they said, well, if these Sunday school classrooms are open, why don't we use that as a model to shelter homeless families and provide them with a meal, know that they're safe outside of the elements, etc. And that how was the Interfaith Hospitality Network was born. And Interfaith Hospitality Network over the years became Family Promise. And the reason for those two words, family, it's our focus. We don't help singles. There are so many organizations that help single people, not enough that help in totality families. And the second word, promise, is that when we commit to a family, we make a promise, we're going to walk alongside them, be there for them along this journey of being homeless now to hopefully housed in the future. And what Karen started in 1986 has now grown after all these decades to 207 family promises across the country in 43 states. And within the next years, we're going to be in all 50 states. And where's family promise? Typically on the outskirts of major cities, because that's where funding ends. You'll find family promises in the most unlikely small little towns, including Santa Clarita, because the funding stops at the borders of Los Angeles, and this is where Family Promise steps in.
You know, what I love out of what you just said was how you are only focused on helping families. I mean, I would have to presume that there's so many families out there struggling that we don't necessarily hear about or see that are homeless. What what constitutes a family? And out of those, I'd also be curious, are a lot of them single parent families as well?
So the first is statistically, just for Santa Clarita, our story started in 2009 when our founders, Larry and Terry Comp, sought the need for services in not just in LA, but in Santa Clarita specifically. They saw that family homelessness was increasing. They reached out to the local faith community. We found the host congregations where families would sleep overnight for a week at a time. They're not there during the day, so they would come in at 5:30, be given a meal, given a bed, sleep in the fellowship hall or in the classroom, exit the next morning and come back the next night. And so in 2011, June the 5th, we started our first family. What constitutes a family for us? It's a parent or a co-parenting. So they can be engaged, they can be boyfriend, girlfriend, they can be married, and they must have at least one child under the age of 18 or be pregnant. Okay. So our audience tends to be on the younger side. Over the 10-year period from June 2011 till today, 76% of the families that we served were single household led by a single mother. And there are many reasons for that. Mothers are the most vulnerable. They typically have raised the kids. They've taken care of the child. Their career, their education took a background. Something happens in the relationship with the dad, the boyfriend, they break up, and suddenly the mother finds herself homeless with the children. And there's often, we find nearly 90% of our cases, no spousal support, no child support. The dad is gone, he's absent, and one of the things we do with our mothers is encourage them, go to legal aid, get that in place. You have small kids, you are homeless, you have the responsibility for your kids until they're at least 18. The dad won't always be unemployed, he won't always be gone. We will find a way that they have his social, they will be able to garnish his wages, because he's not homeless, you are homeless. You are sleeping in your car. You are sleeping in a motel because you are destitute. Mm-hmm. What we found, Robert, from March last year through June this year, that 76% jumped to 96% single mothers. Wow. And the reason is, again, mothers lost their jobs, but more than ever, they lost childcare. The schools were suddenly closed. Mm-hmm. They had nowhere to take their kids. If they had childcare through a government program, that program burned through childcare funds. And so we have mothers who said, I had a job. I had no family, no friends. My kids had nowhere to go. The schools were closed. I had to quit my job. Mm-hmm. Last year on Mother's Day, NPR ran an article. This was like 3 months into COVID. That 76 million American women were affected by not having childcare.
I believe that. Absolutely.
And so that's what we see, the rise in single mothers being homeless. And I think one of the things for our listeners that we have to differentiate, the biggest difference between single people becoming homeless, there are a lot of reasons. Mental health plays a huge role in that. Mm-hmm. Some are by choice, some are work class, etc. For family homelessness, it's economic. Pure economics. It is somebody loses a job, somebody loses childcare, somebody loses income. You can no longer afford to pay your rent. You don't have the childcare to pay for your child to go to childcare while you go to work, and you become homeless. And so the field of what we do is purely getting them back on their feet. And the number one way to do it, find a job. If you have a job, let's find you childcare. If you have childcare, let's find you transportation, how to get to work, how to drop your kids off where they need to be for childcare. And then the next step is you need to save money, because without money, you cannot find housing.
Yeah, absolutely. What's really interesting through COVID-19 was there were the mortgage kind of allowances and the rent moratoriums that kind of protected renters, right? Did a lot of the clients you're helping not have those benefits available?
Exactly. So you say the word right, and I would say the word wrong. What we found is the majority of our clients have a verbal contract. They'll go rent from you, And they're like, I'll pay you $1,500 a month and I'll rent a room from you. Most of our families were not in rentals that they were able to afford. They were already in a precarious position where they were renting a bedroom from a friend or a family or a living room space. And then they get told, our son is coming back. He lost his job. We have other family moving in. We've had the strangest stories where people phone us and say, I've never been homeless in my entire life. I have 1 day, 2, 5 days to exit. I have no idea what to do. I can no longer afford to pay the rent to the landlord or landlady or the family that I'm renting from. And so that entire eviction moratorium meant absolutely nothing to them because there was no protection for them. When you owe an agency money, the agency can be lenient and say, okay, we'll go according to the CDC guidelines and we'll give you an extension. When it's a private individual, they say you have to leave. And that's what we found. In the middle of the pandemic, families were being evicted left and right, told to leave because they'd fallen behind in their rent and could no longer afford to pay. When the city of Santa Clarita came out in April with the program of $6.5 million that was available to families and individuals to pay their back rent, they had 800 applications. We didn't have a single client that was eligible. All the clients we were serving had already left where they were staying or had already been evicted and were not eligible to apply for back rent. And that's the sad story. There's COVID. The small claims court is closed. You don't have the money for an attorney. You don't even have a legal contract that was signed. You just have a verbal contract. And so to be exited was this part of this process. And that's where we stepped in. Wow. To assist, especially the single mothers that were evicted during the pandemic.
Wow. If you had to put a number as to how many families you're helping at any given time, what number would that be?
I would say over a given week, we have maybe a caseload of 16 active families.
Wow.
And then we work with other agencies like Single Mothers Outreach. We work with Bridge to Home. We work with Samuel Dixon Family Services, Child and Family Center. And so there will be some touch points where we work with the family. They work with those agencies. We get a lot of recommendations from our 5 school districts. So there's some interaction with whom we work. It's also transient. People are moving along the 14 corridor and along the 5 and the 405 corridor. So families will move from Lancaster, Palmdale, where they've lost their job, come through Santa Clarita, go to LA or go up towards Bakersfield, or they will move along the 405 from Santa Clarita down to LA, down to Orange County. But I would say the majority of the clients are local to Santa Clarita. Oh. And it's something we can no longer ignore thinking, oh, it's a problem from people coming outside of Los Angeles to Santa Clarita. No, it's systemic within our own city. We are finding more and more people, mothers who went through a divorce, through a separation, or a family that lost their housing during this period. They had a short sale. They were not able to refinance because they had no income. Right. And the bank said, sorry, both of you lost your jobs. We are not going to refinance you at this crazy low rate of 3%. We are going to take the house. You have to leave. And that's not something typical that we found is middle-class people who've never been homeless, who had the luxury of maybe a mother staying home and raising kids while the dad was working. For the first time, they suddenly become homeless. Mm-hmm. And this pandemic has turned everything on its head.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh, that's heartbreaking. And how long have you been doing this in Santa Clarita?
So we just celebrated 10 years.
Wow.
June the 5th, 2011, we hosted the first family at a congregation. So a few weeks ago, we had our 10th anniversary. So we're now in our teens. We've been established. We've proven what we can do. In that time, we sheltered 117 families at congregations. And they would typically stay 30, 60, 90 days. And we would evaluate their goals. Typically after 90 days, most families would have a job, would have childcare, and would have the possibility to find alternative housing. We've had families stay longer, 5, 6, 7 months, if they were making good progress. And we estimate that in that 10 years that our congregations served about 76,000 meals to families.
Wow. That is incredible. I'm very surprised and impressed to hear that. I mean, even at the longest of, let's say, 6 months, that's a relatively just short term. We're stepping in the emergency help. And I'd love to hear, I mean, they must be getting back on their feet. They just need that short term gap.
One of the unique things about our program is, Robert, we cover everything. So we have 3 goals, and it's just 6 words. Find a job, save money, find housing. That's it. Find a job, save money, and that's the number one goal. We provide all the food. We provide the cleaning supplies, toiletries, laundry detergent. We would pay for their laundry to be washed. We paid for the transportation. We help out with Lyft, Uber, tap cards, etc. Your goal is, once you have a job, now you need to save money because you need to get into housing. You need to get yourself out of the situation. If you had debt, credit card debt, loans, etc., pay it off. Get clear and free of that you can rebuild your life and have a future. Statistically, the sooner a family exits homelessness, it has been proven that the shorter that period between homeless and housed, that it virtually guarantees they will not be homeless again.
Wow.
Which makes it difficult for us because, you guys are in the financial world. You work with numbers, and numbers don't lie. So if a family comes to us and they've been homeless for a year, 2, 3, 4 years, unemployed, versus I have a family that has always had a job, something economic happened, it's a setback. If I have a space to choose between which family, I have to go with math. I have to go with statistically which family do we have a better chance of exiting homelessness and getting back on their feet. And the family that has been homeless for a year, 2, 3, 4 years and hasn't looked for a job, etc., that is chronically homeless, there's been so much support to them from so many government agencies and other nonprofits, while the family that just became homeless for the first time, they have no idea how to navigate the system. They don't know where to apply for benefits, etc. And I think that's where we have a niche in stepping in and helping that family get through the trauma, get back on their feet, and get housed again.
I love that.
We would love to help everybody. The reality is we were able to help anywhere from 1 to 4 families overnight at congregations. And then everything came crashing down in March last year when all of our host sites closed.
Wow. When did they open back up?
They haven't.
Oh my gosh.
So what we had to do is pivot last year. Every host site immediately closed. We tried to rent from some of the bigger congregations that had fellowship halls and classrooms. And several of them had preschools and said, well, we don't know how this is going to affect our preschool. We don't want to endanger our kids and our staff. And so we thought we would be able to rent space, which would be cheaper than motels, and it didn't work. And so we pivoted to putting more and more families in motels. From last year, March, through this morning, when 4 of our families left motels, we had done, I think, about 24 families for close to 190 days in motels. That's half of a year that we put families in motels from our budget because we had nowhere else to go. We were doing triage. Yeah. We were putting families in Castaic. Castaic is typically a third cheaper than any hotel, sometimes half of Santa Clarita or Stevenson Ranch. And we would put families in motels, help them with a gas card, drop off food. If it was a newborn, help them with diapers and laundry detergent. We want families to present as clean, as washed, as shaven, clean clothing, and not as homeless. And so our entire program changed on its head. We had to just move, but it didn't solve the problem. You cannot just put everybody in a motel. You'll run out of money.
Right.
And that's where the story comes in.
Yeah. Yeah. That's incredible because Family Promise could have said, sorry, that this doesn't fit our system. This doesn't fit our budget. But instead, you went and did what you needed to do for the people that were relying on you, keeping the promise that you had made.
We had in that period, Robert, 3 pregnant women who were in motel stays, who had slept in their car. And one of them, we checked them in on a Saturday morning. That night she went into labor. The husband with the 3 kids was staying in the motel. And Sunday morning at Henry Mayo, she gave birth.
Wow.
And imagine if we had said, sorry, we can't help you.
Right.
That's just where you step up. We become the emergency.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, like you said, that all comes at a cost to the organization, right? So how exactly are you funding Family Promise?
So we are grateful for the city, for the CDBG grant that we receive. CDBG helps us to offset some of the costs from hotel stays for eligible clients and for our case management. We have to fundraise. We get no support from Family Promise National in terms of money coming down. Grant writing, last year was a great year for us. Both government grants for the first time that we received it. We've never received it before. And also grants of organizations that have supported us for many years. Some of our grantors have been with us for 10 years. Our entire duration,
wow.
These foundations have supported us and we are thankful to them. And then our annual appeal is the bulk of our income. And then our what we did for the first 8 years was Box City, where we simulated being homeless, sleeping in a box. And our typical audience was a few adults, youth groups, kids, scouts, high schoolers. And then we changed that in 2009 to a golf tournament, different audience, business people who golf. And we transitioned from Box City to the golf tournament. We did the same income that we had done for the Box City all the years. We were very pleased with that. And then we were set to have our golf tournament in 2020. It never happened. COVID happened. Yeah. And so we are pleased that we will on October the 18th on a Monday, again at Sand Canyon. And we want to do a shout out to Steve Kim, the owner of Sand Canyon, that will have us for the second year in a row to have our golf tournament. And we have a ton of spots available. Foursomes, twosomes, singles. We have opportunities for sponsorships. And that is our major fundraiser for the year. That funds what we do for the next couple of months in 2022. As you know, January through March after Christmas is the lean months in the life of any nonprofit.
Yes.
There's not a lot of money coming in. You have to live off what you did earlier.
Absolutely. How can our listeners find details about the golf tournament?
They can go to our website, familypromisescv.org. They can email me, contact@familypromisescv.org. They can find us on Facebook or Instagram, Family Promise of Santa Clarita Valley. And you can just type it into any search engine and you'll end up with us. And we'll send anybody who wants to sponsor us or wants to come and golf for the day and support a great cause. Yeah. We would appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, I know I'll be there for sure. And, you know, a lot of people like contributing and more than just monetary. Do you accept volunteers or what does that look like?
Family Promise, the 207 affiliates, between our staff and our volunteers, we are the 27th biggest organization in the USA.
Wow.
That is massive. Yeah. We run on volunteers. So typically every night there would be a family or a volunteer welcoming the family. A family or a volunteer would bring the meal and have dinner with the family. And then every night from 10 o'clock to the next morning, 7 o'clock, a volunteer or two would stay overnight with the family because a lot of our families don't have vehicles. And if there's an emergency, they needed to take them to the hospital. We had 4 children born during the program in that first 9 years.
Wow.
So we run on volunteers. Our office was run by volunteers, volunteers who come and help us with the donations, meet with families, etc. That, of course, all ended with COVID. And so we had to reimagine what it means being involved in our community. One of the success stories that came out of COVID is I tried to rent a house. And of course, house prices went through the roof. Rental went through the roof. And I reached out to a donor couple who I had heard via another donor that they have a few houses and maybe they have a house to rent. And I reached out to them and left a voicemail. And a few days later, I just texted them and said, I'm just following up. And I get a phone call from them. And they said, well, we want to help you buy a house. And of course, you don't hear that very often. Right. And, I typically asked them, what's the conversation like? What are you thinking? Are you thinking like, 50,000, 100,000 to help us buy this house? And the donor said, no, all of it. Wow. Which, of course, changes the trajectory of the conversation. In the end, the family gave us the sufficient funds to go buy a house in Castaic. We opened in September last year. And since that time, we've had 10 families live in the house, 28 people. And of the 10 families, 7 families have graduated the program. Wow. Including a mother who graduated on Saturday. We found her a program in San Fernando Valley, which she will have guaranteed rent for the next 3 years.
Wow.
And so for us, it is a seminal moment when one program ends and donors step up and help us to help families. Families have all the responsibilities of a household. They clean it themselves. Every family is responsible for their laundry, keeping the house clean, their bedrooms, etc. We continue to provide case management to the families. We provide everything they need. We pay all the utilities, trash, internet. We've provided them through a Girl Scout who did her Gold Award with laptops and printers. We provide them with their laundry detergent supplies, cleaning supplies, toiletries. There's no lack of anything. Every family has their dedicated bedroom. Every family during COVID has their own dedicated space in the household. And we were able then to go back to volunteers and say, would you look at the possible list of what families might need? So on Sunday mornings, volunteers drop off groceries for the families and they distribute it evenly among the families. We've got 4 fridges, so each family in the household has their own fridge. And then we have on Wednesdays where a family or 2 can drop off the meals that is already prepared for the families. And that's a way for us, for volunteers to give back to the community. As COVID eases because of more people getting vaccinated and COVID numbers dropping, we hope that as kids return to school and as they have more assignments, that we will have all the kids know how to use Zoom. That's the way they've been connecting to their teachers and their classmates, that we will have tutors be able in the afternoons or over weekends to help these kids that might have fallen behind in their schoolwork to catch up again. One of the many stories we hear is, my kids still went to school while I'm homeless in the car. And so where do you find internet? Well, we park in front of hotels because the hotels have free Wi-Fi to jump on.
Right.
And so, take your hat off to parents who might not have a job, who were homeless, sleeping in their car, but they knew that education for their children was so vital.
Yeah.
And then other ways that we might be able to assist families is, one of the big stumbling blocks is when you have no credit or bad credit, is how to fix it. When you have an eviction on your credit history, how to get rid of that. And so for us, financial education of families is really vital. How to help them help themselves. Because if you're going to try and find an apartment and they run your credit score versus your income, and a lot of companies are asking not just twice your monthly income, your rent must be half of your income. Some of them are asking 3 times your rent as income, which makes it difficult for low-income families.
Yeah.
Add to that, you might not have the credit score and you get rejected because you have a family with a higher credit score, which they see as more credit worthy to rent to in the long run.
Yeah. So who and how are they providing the financial education aspect?
So we've been working with 1 or 2 people that have helped our families. One of the best advice we've received for families is a prepaid credit card It works like a prepaid debit card. You cannot spend more on the credit card than what you have in the bank. Families will put in gas, go buy their food, go to the bank, go pay off the credit card, and within weeks, we can see a jump in their credit score. We had a mother who had a prepaid card, jumped 90 points, and then got a second prepaid card when she was driving for Lyft, jumped another 60 points. And on her credit history, a 150-point jump made the difference that she could find housing.
Wow, that is impactful.
And a lot of families don't know it. You know, we've struggled with Congress not passing that a debit card is part of your credit journey. It's never passed. And so low income and homeless families do not have credit cards. For us that are middle class and working, a credit card is the normal way to build up credit. But when you don't have that, it never shows in your credit history. So this is just the way. And another way is pay off your debt. Credit, medical debt is not supposed to be on your credit history. It makes it there. And a lot of families have debt from medical insurance that didn't pay, and our advice is get it off, write to the agencies, log onto your credit reports, clean it out, put the effort in. This mother that worked on a credit history, she took 9 months, but her credit score flipped from the low 400s to over 600 within a 9-month period. It can be done.
Wow. Yeah, that's incredible.
I need to do a shout out to Johnny Yee. He's been a volunteer with VITA, the IRS site, for 20 years. Johnny and his wife have been volunteering with us, and they're going to move to Monrovia. They're going to be remote. But what a joy when Johnny comes in and he sits down with the family, he and his wife, and they do their taxes. They get them the tax credits that they are eligible for, and a family walks away with a $2,000 or $3,000 or $4,000 that they never expected.
Wow.
And that's where volunteers make a difference. A lot of low-income and homeless families think, well, I didn't earn any money in this year, or I didn't earn enough to pay taxes, i.e., I'm not filing a tax return. They forget that they are eligible for the earned income credit and the alternative minimum tax credit. And if you add those credits together, it enabled one of the mothers in our house, when she got $6,000 back, to go buy a car,
right,
because she had no vehicle. So those are ways that the community can get involved. Once we have our future resource center, there will be many more opportunities for families to be served by volunteers, not just in the weekdays, but also over weekends.
Yeah.
We envision we will have a full functioning kitchen. One of the things that happens when you're low income is you live off cow fresh. Every fast food restaurant shouts EBT cards accepted. And so fats and oils and salt is part of your diet. When you don't have a house and don't have a microwave or a kitchen, you don't know how to cook. One of the things happening in our house is we are teaching families how to cook their own meals and prepare a healthy, decent meal. The same will happen with the 4 units we will have at our new site. The families will have a full functioning kitchen, microwave, stove, and refrigerator. And we envision that at least once a month, we'll have a cooking class, teaching families from the community how to prepare a decent, healthy meal for your family.
Yeah. It's so incredible because, you know, when you think about a nonprofit or a charity helping these individuals, you think, okay, you're subsidizing housing or providing, you know, those emergency tools, but the financial education, the health education, all of those pieces are so complementary to them, not just getting back on their feet, but really rebuilding their values and their health and their life going forward in a much better way.
And I think one of the things, Robert, we forget is mental health. I just came from Samuel Dixon Family Services, and I met with their executive director, Philip Solomon. And the reality for homeless families is that becoming homeless or having been homeless is a trauma, not just to you as an adult, the parent, but to the children as well. We work with the county's mental health. We work with Samuel Dixon. We refer a lot of families. If I had to guess, maybe 70% of every adult we work with either has depression or anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
We see it in our children, that they have come through this experience of being yanked from, we had a house, then we slept with family, then we were couch surfing with friends, and then ultimately we were sleeping in our car.
Wow.
And then if we can't afford the car or the car gets towed, we are totally homeless.
Mm-hmm.
And that effect on kids and on the parents, we have to address. We have to address that depression, that anxiety. There's often domestic violence. If we don't address the underlying causes that continue to fester and grow, you can't become a healthy person.
Mm-hmm.
And so for us, mental health and addressing it is a real big issue.
Right.
And we appreciate working with other agencies on that, not just for adults, but for children as well. We tend to forget that the trauma that children endure is part of the baggage that they will carry for the rest of their life, that they were homeless.
Mm-hmm.
And they know firsthand what it means not to have a bed to sleep in and not to have consistency.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I've said it thousands of times in the last few months, but COVID-19, probably the number one thing coming out of COVID-19 is the mental health or the lack thereof for any given family, no matter the economic status. Everyone is dealing with new levels of stress, anxiety, depression, managing the family, managing everything they have. So I love that you're focusing on really that root cause of where things go wrong.
And there are minor things that it's like building blocks, building up to the top of a building. The foundation is you need transportation.
Mm-hmm.
We have the bus, but if you have to commute an hour and a half by taking 3 buses, it's not conducive to get to work. And if you have to pay $32 for Lyft to drive from Castaic to Canyon Country, because that's where your work is, and you're paying $60 for the day and you've only made $90, and then you have to pay childcare. So one of the things that we've done is focus on helping with transportation. If a parent is working, getting them to work, either with a tap card or with Lyft or Uber vouchers or paying for their gas. We got a small grant from the city of Santa Clarita to help with that. And then also we applied in that grant for childcare. We have working mothers who have lost their childcare. And for us, that 1 or 2 or 3 weeks that we step in, they find a childcare provider, we pay them directly. It helps that mother to save up that she can have childcare for the next coming weeks. And it's minor things, and $100, $200, $300 might not seem like a lot, but when you have nothing and you are rebuilding everything you have, it makes the ultimate difference.
Yeah.
I am going to the bank right now. We started our own program as part of our budgeting for 2021. We realized as a board that a lot of families were not going to be eligible for rent forgiveness. And once they were evicted or lost their housing, they don't have the funds when they do find housing to move in. And so I'm meeting up with a mother. We assisted her with a security deposit, a half of her June rent, and we're assisting her with a portion of her July rent. She's got a job. She's got childcare. Her daughter's going to go back to school. She just needs to get over that hump into housing. And for us, it's a minor thing we do, but it takes her from being homeless to being housed.
Mm-hmm. And alleviating a lot of stress.
Yeah.
So she has a better chance of making it across that gap. Yeah, that's huge. For any of our listeners that want to get involved and contribute, whether that's money or volunteering, what immediate needs do you have at Family Promise of Santa Clarita?
If you send an email to me at contact@familypromisescv.org, I can connect you to our program manager who oversees the groceries and the meals to our families. We receive all of our donations in kind. So when we have a family that has a newborn or a child under 2-3 years, we help them with diapers. We provide all the laundry detergent, cleaning supplies, toiletries, personal hygiene products, etc. And so anyone can do a drive, collect these items for us. we will pick it up, or you can drop it off to us. We have 2 storage bins. We have the house, the entire garage where we store supplies, and we make sure that families, whether in our a transitional house or at hotels or that come to our office, receive these supplies that they need. We want low-income and homeless families to know that there is a support system available for whatever supplies they need.
Yeah, incredible. We'll include your website and email and the contact information in our show notes. Definitely don't forget if you're local to Southern California, do not forget to check out the golf tournament Family Promise of Santa Clarita is putting on October 18th at Sand Canyon Country Club. Fred Watchel, you talked way too much. You're never allowed to come back and co-host. So you're off. Any parting words?
I just want to say that it is a great organization, and that's why I became a part of it. And more importantly, and that's why I let Roché do all the talking, is his passion for this is remarkable. And he lives this stuff 24/7. You can reach him for help. Yeah. And, how can you not join an organization or try to help an organization that feels that way?
Yeah.
So it's been a great organization, and I am glad to be a part of it, and I look forward to seeing a lot of people at the golf tournament.
Love it. Dr. Roché, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Robert and Fred, for having us and sharing a community response to homelessness. It's going to take a community to solve this, and that is for us the most important thing. We are not alone trying to solve family homelessness. The community can rally around us in various ways, whether it's a Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, a church group, a youth group, kids from high school, an adult that gathers all their friends and says, I'm going to do a drive for gift cards that will give family the funds to get an Uber card or a gas card to go to work. All of those things in the end add up to make a difference.
I love it. I completely agree. With the community, we can get it done. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Securities and investment advisory services offered through Next Financial Group, Inc., member FINRA SIPC. Prosperitas Financial is not an affiliate of Next Financial Group, Inc. This material is not intended as an offer or solicitation for the purchase of sale of any security or other financial instrument. Past performance does not guarantee future performance. All the views expressed are those of Robert Clark and Prosperitas Financial, and not of those of Next Financial Group, Inc. Next does not offer tax or legal advice. The S&P 500 is a market cap weighted index composed of common stocks of 500 leading companies in the leading industries of the U.S. economy. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is a price weighted index of 30 actively traded blue chip stocks.